1984, so I know it's hard to remember. All 1980 members. That's why you have to go and collect them all. Tell your parents they can buy them at the mall. Now! When's that new series of 1984s coming out? Right now! Go! Go! Go!
Hello and welcome to the inaugural edition of Speeding Bullets Repackaged. I am Richie.
Repackaged. Hey, it's Tupper. How you guys doing out there in Internet Toylands? This is so exciting. I was telling Richie, he already recorded it, so he'll put it somewhere, I'm sure. This is us at our maximum nerditude. This is the highest point of nerdity that we, I think, have ever achieved on the internet. Because we're here to do a regular series about action figures, about toys, something that Richie and I are super passionate about and have been passionate about for decades.
And something that Jamie wants absolutely nothing to do with.
That's right. The odds of Jamie being on this podcast are slim. Like, it's not a 0%.
No. She might be like...
I feel like it's 5%.
5%. That's a good
of the episodes.
She can correct us after she listens. Yes,
yeah,
this
she
one
would get
we
nothing out of this.
Also specifically going to be hopefully getting it out on YouTube as well, because there are visual aspects to it. I have been fine-tuning our video process and slowly putting shit up on our YouTube. But yes, that's right. Neither here nor there, or what we are here to talk about today.
That's
which is action figures.
Richie put on makeup. That was a long pause. What we're here to talk about today, beep, 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 it's action figures. Yes,
that's right.
Because if there is one thing that action figure collectors are good at, it's being patient.
Oh yes, I can tell you a story about that right now, because as Tupper already knows, a recent 2-pack that I bought, a Flashpoint Thomas Wayne Batman Reverse Flash 2-pack that I pre-ordered, was initially supposed to come out before Christmas, the same day I think originally as the Dark Side that I bought him for Christmas, and I just got it on Tuesday because it kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. So,
yep. Yeah, it is. You've been saying it's supposed to be coming on Wednesday, it's supposed to be coming on Thursday, it's supposed to be coming on Tuesday for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And it finally showed up. Yeah. Which you're thankful for, and I'm thankful for the lack of reminders, because I don't have it, so I don't care.
Yes. So we planned for the first episode that we would give you a little insight into our history with action figures and how we got into it, which we'll start off with before I mention the other topics. I'll let Tupper go first.
Oh, you're gonna let me go first? I was like, I'm very excited to hear your journey.
All right. I guess
because I've talked about it before, about the ways that I've gotten into it in little bits and bobs, but I don't know anything about your history up until I got you back into it. So
for me, there's different stages. Of course, there's your kid stage where you first learn about action figures and want to play with them and have no idea that the He-Man figures I owned when I was a kid, if I still had them, would be worth money right now. But so there's that. And so I think my initial I was into, like I said, He-Man. I had everything He-Man wise, both castles, Castle Grayskull, Snake Mountain, both sides of good and bad. Ninja Turtles was another big one when I was a kid. All the TMNT 90s series, I had a plethora of those, and because they made all kinds of different ones of those. And
yes, they did.
After I kind of grew out of the action figure playing stage, I don't really have anything from my kid stage of action figures, unfortunately, because at that age we weren't thinking about that.
Speak for yourself. I'll get to that in my story.
At least I wasn't. It was the furthest thing from my mind. It wasn't until I started collecting Superman stuff specifically where I would, like you can probably see up here, a Superman figure. That's a Superman Red. I was getting sort of like just Superman figures, and anything like Superman related. And I have like other like little things, like there's a little Doomsday over here. You can.
Hey, Richie, you like Superman?
Yeah, who would have thought? So there, and these,
just in case you haven't listened to any of other podcast shenanigans over the years, Richie is a massive, massive Superman fan. Probably the biggest Superman fan, I'd say, in Ontario.
Yeah, probably. So, and at that stage, those aren't even like the McFarlane toys. That was back when it was like DC Essentials, I think, was the toy line.
DC Universe. I think, yeah.
Yeah, DC Universe.
There was
DC Universe, and then there was Essentials.
Yeah, and they had the DC Direct figures, and they had I think it was Hell was the one who did the DC Universe stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So I would have those figures and littered throughout my collection. And then I started kind of expanding figures that I don't have anymore that I wish I still had. I have no idea where they went. But I used to have the complete Bob and Doug McKenzie playset. I think it was NECA that did it. It was probably NECA that did it. And
McFarlane did one too. They did one too.
So
did it make voices? Did it have like voice?
No, it
chips?
didn't have voices.
That was maybe it was NECA.
But it had like their whole set came with it. And I also, because I'm a big Metallica fan, I also had like the Metallica band figures. And I have no idea where those went, so unfortunately. So I have those, and then I started, because I'm also, if you haven't listened to this podcast ever, or our other podcasts, I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. So
also true.
It grew into, I grabbed, because there's Jay and Silent Bob action figures just over there, as well as Blunt Man and Chronic, and some Clerks action figures. So I started gathering action figures towards specific interests, and then in my like heavy comic book phase, when I was right around when the first Ottawa Comic-Con was, that is when I started to pick up the Justice League New 52.
2012.
Yeah. Justice League New 52 action figures and the Crime Syndicate, their counterparts. Slowly, I was sort of, as they came out, I was picking them up, and then I think it was the first Comic-Con. Maybe, yeah, it was the first Comic-Con. The comic book shop had a midnight sale, and that's when I bought the rest of the set that I didn't have. And those ones I kept in a box for a long, and I just displayed. The only ones that I had outside of package and displayed and posed were like my little previous ones that I had gathered along the way. And I'm like, so at this point, I was like, I'm keeping my comic books nice and safe. You know what? I'll just, put them up on the wall and they can look nice in the package. And then
I remember one of your apartments in one of your in your room, you had them all displayed on the wall.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when I moved in here, for the longest time, because I didn't have my office set up at all, it was when we started this podcast, I carved my office area into here and actually set up my shelves, and that's when Tupper's like, fucking display those things. I was like, all right. I cracked open the Justice League and the Crime Syndicate and started posing them. Unfortunately, there's two figures in that. I think it was two Crime Syndicate figures. I think it was Owlman and Power Ring that when I was adjusting them, the hand broke off. So I was like, fuck. But
the Power Ring one, because you lost power, his actual power.
And which is funny because I think canonically he does lose his hand at some point as well. So it's funny.
Canonically. Canonically, Richie.
Canonically, whatever.
Canonically.
So at that point, I had set those up, and I had slowly, thanks to Tupper's, started buying new action figures. And I've gotten a lot over the past year.
Oh boy, has he ever.
And now, because before I had absolutely zero Marvel figures, and now I have...
That's right, you didn't have any.
I have a whole shelf of Marvel with a couple figures littered. I also have... The other collection I currently have is my Masters of the Universe Revelations He-Man stuff, because that's Kevin Smith related.
Kevin Smith,
But He-Man, because that's one of my... kid passions, but yeah, that's
it's like two of your favorite things mashed together.
Yeah,
Kevin
exactly.
Smith and Masters of the Universe.
Yeah. So that's my journey in a nutshell, in a package, so to speak.
In a package. So, again, just like Richie, I also got started as a kid. Now, the little bit of context to it, though, is that as a kid, my parents fought a lot, which was not great. Not fun when your parents are always arguing and getting in fights and everything. But probably around four years old, they started to, realized that they were having a lot of arguments, and they started to buy my love back as a way of saying, hey, sorry we're incompatible as human beings. Here's a bunch of crazy shit you don't really need that will distract you from our familial dysfunction. And listen, it worked like a charm, I have to say, because in the 80s, we had, G.I. Joe and Transformers and He-Man, and I had Star Wars figures. I had everything. I had so many Transformers. I had every single G.I. Joe toy and the vehicles.
I did have some G.I. Joes and Transformers, but they weren't like my other ones.
They weren't your favorites, yeah. G.I. Joe ended up being the big one because my dad loved the little mini guns and he's a big military guy, so he loved the realism that the G.I. Joe action figure line in the 80s brought, using, real world vehicles and real world weapons and adapting them for kids, which in retrospect, kind of shitty. Way to continue the military industrial complex by getting kids interested into toys that are based upon them. But whatever. It's fine. I'm an old progressive liberal. It worked, I skirted the whole thing. Anti-war, no wars, but I like the toys. So I had everything. I had action figure lines that are so obscure you wouldn't even know what they are. Like Sectors, they were large figures, and you could pop at them by putting your hand in them and crawl around like a spider. They were great. So for, until the mid 1990s, if it was a toy, I had it and I got into it, and I had thing. I moved from the G.I. Joe lines and the Transformer lines in the 80s to the Ninja Turtles. So I had a bunch of those. And I had, when the X-Men, Toy Biz started making X-Men figures, I had all that shit as well. Batman, all of it. I had as much of everything as I could get. And then, of course, you get older and you realize, I'm more interested in human interactions and drinking and trying to get dates with girls. And at the time, if you wanted to get dates with girls, you really couldn't talk about your action figure love, because back in the day, very few, at least from my perspective, of girls that I would be interested in liked toys or was interested in toys.
Or seeing them displayed in your in your place.
They all kind of went in boxes as time went on, but they would always be favorites. I've always had toys on shelves in every aspect of my life. It's just sometimes they were smaller collections, maybe just one shelf. But I always had some kind of action figure out for display, some kind of thing to put on a shelf, because I love knickknacks and I'm a big knickknack person. So action figures to me are just movable, posable knickknacks. You can change the display based on your mood. So I got into the 2000s. I was not really into toy collecting at all at that point. And I had a couple of things out, but nothing really major. And then I got married, and then I got a job, and I had disposable income, and I went to Free Comic Book Day at Strange Adventures in Halifax when I used to live there. And they had some pretty cool toys out, man. They had a Wolverine figure that was like... It was when the Toy Biz line started moving towards more massive articulation. So we went from 5 or 6 points of articulation in the 80s to this was now like 20, 25 points. The wrists moved and bent, and the hands opened and closed, and the neck was on a ball joint and moved around. And I'm like, oh my God, this is great. So I got a Wolverine figure that day, which I still have, and I was like, this is, I think, the beginning of a new renaissance. So starting in 2003 is when I started really getting back into collecting toys. I got a ton of X-Men figures. Anything the Toy Biz line released, I was pretty much on top of, as long as it fit my aesthetic. And I got a couple of Batmans and a couple of Supermans. And I was just kind of keeping an eye on things, like I would see something when I would go to get comic books at the comic book shop, and if I liked it, I picked it up. So I had a bunch of things from about 2003 to about 2008. I did a lot of massive collecting. Then I moved to Ottawa, 2007, and I got a couple of things after that, but it started to drop off because I didn't really have space. I didn't really have room for anything. And I was doing minor collecting. I'd gotten a couple of the DC Universe figures because I was into them at the time too, because they were really cool. And I've always been a little bit more of a DC fan as far as the toys are concerned than a Marvel fan. So I wanted to get a bunch of, and I was reading more DC comics at the time, so I wanted to pad the collection. So I got into a lot of the DC Universe stuff that I think it was Mattel. They were the ones that were doing it at the time. And then around 2012, 2013, I kind of got out of it. I finished a couple of my collections off, and I was like, I think I'm good for now. I was very busy running a bunch of companies and trying to do artwork. So I just wasn't able to keep up with it. And it's an expensive hobby. And when you're not making a lot of money, it is something you definitely have to be very choosy about. So for years, I think from 2013 to 2019, I got maybe 3 figures in that span of time. And then I realized that I could get a little bit back into it because I have the space, and some of the stuff that I had was getting a little long in the tooth, a little old. And I knew they had new ones coming out of new stuff, and I started looking into it, and I started kind of checking it out, and I was like, okay, we can dip our toes a little bit back in here, maybe get some stuff that we want. And then the pandemic hit, and it was awful for a lot of people. I was able to get and have access to more money pandemic thanks to the recovery efforts, and I benefited from that. So I kind of had disposable income again, and that's when we got back into it, hardcore style. That's the G.I. Joe Classified line had come out just at the beginning of the pandemic, literally I think March.
Yeah.
So as the pandemic hit, the first G.I. Joe classified figure also was on stores, and I was like, oh, I think we can get back into this. And then Marvel was doing some really cool stuff with their figure line through Hasbro, and there was some pretty cool DC stuff because the McFarlane stuff has started just around that same time too, just at the beginning, I think, of 2020. And I was like, okay, there's some cool shit out now. There's some cool shit. We can get back into this. And I got back into it pretty heavily, just like you got into it. And it's I've had to cut back a little bit. I really enjoy it. So I mean, it's still pretty high on my list of things to keep doing. And yeah, that's why we're doing this podcast, because Richie and I are both regular collectors.
We go on regular
tiny
jaunts to find figures. The other figure set that I have that I didn't mention already is the horror figure set that I've started to gather. So I've got.
You definitely got into the horror thing recently, yeah. So Richie, you mentioned we should talk about our process for when we
obtain them
get
and
new stuff.
Open them, yes.
So you kept your stuff in packaging for years. I just want to back end this a little bit by saying I've never been a keep it in a box sort of person, because I had them out when I was a kid. My dad used to display them sometimes. I would be playing with G.I. Joes, and I go to bed and I get up in the morning, and they'd all the ones I had would be just laid out on the coffee table, all stood up with their guns in their hands and everything. And I was like, I like that. That's cool. And then of course I would play with them and everything, but I was like, I like this idea. And I've never been a big box collector, which of course does reduce the value when you take them out of the package. But they look so much better on your shelf when they're open.
And I when Tupper made that point to me when I started to set this all back up again, it was right, and I'm happy he did, and I'm getting better at making the poses too. Because the other thing was because I up until I started again, I didn't have any McFarlane stuff because it hadn't come out yet, right? So I had to learn some of the different poses and how to pose, but it looks better when you have them posed.
Yeah, and I mean the thing too is that in the 80s and in the 90s, or especially the early 90s, a lot of that stuff in packaging, I mean, their arms raised.
Yeah.
That's it, they didn't really have a lot of posability, so they kind of did look pretty cool on your shelf in a package.
Yeah. And
that's where their value started to appreciate for wrapped and packaged action figures. But I mean, that's why I loved the G.I. Joe line as a kid, because they were posable, and you could put them in different poses, and you could have them in action poses and everything, and they came with stands. And I really like that aspect of action figure collecting. And that's why, for me, it's gotten more and more, I've gotten more and more into it as I've gotten older, is because the toys have started to match what I've always had in my head as how it should look. Mm-hmm. It's not just a statue on a shelf, where you can sometimes raise the arm up to look like it's shooting. You can do really detailed and cool poses and fun poses with those figures now, because they're ultra posable. Mm-hmm. And keeping them in a box feels like you're just depriving them a joy of movement. I always think of Toy Story, a toy is meant to be played with. Yeah. And if you keep them in their boxes, well, they get depressed and sad and lonely, like the Prospector in Toy Story 2? Yeah, it was Toy Story 2. Voiced by Kelsey Grammer, where he's just like, I've been trapped in this box for years. And he was just old and grizzled, and I'm like, I don't want my toys to feel that way. I want them to get out and get some breathability, at least for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so when it comes to me, it doesn't matter how I obtain them, whether it's us going out to go find some, or me going out on my own adventures, or ordering them online. But generally, when I get them home, and I kind of have a ritual for things, because, for example, for those of you who haven't listened before, I smoke pot, and before I was vaping pot,
shocker.
I was smoking.
This is not
Yeah,
pot, by the
yeah.
way. This is just tobacco. If you see me on
I
the
would
screen
have
smoking,
like a rolling ritual when I was rolling joints. It's the same thing when like I had hero clicks. I had a ritual when I opened hero clicks. It's just a thing that I do for things. So when I get it home, it depends on my excitement level for something. Like obviously I'm excited for it because I bought it, but there are figures that I'm more excited over than others. But I don't open it right away. One, because usually when I get it home, it's, I got to start doing other stuff, kids, family, whatever.
you do have a big family, yeah.
But I also like to keep it on my desk for a day sometimes, so it can be like, oh.
I have been chosen. Farewell, my friends. I go on to a better place.
I prepped that. So, like they can appreciate that they've been chosen, and then I'll sit here at my desk and I'll open it, and
It's like Christmas too.
yeah.
It's like a little bit of Christmas every day that you get a new toy. You're like, oh, I'm just gonna wait. One of the best things about Christmas I've always found is that knowing that something is coming, but being excited about it, but having to wait. Mm-hmm. And I think that translates to the process of action figure collecting. I think psychologically for a lot of us, I think it absolutely is that. It's capturing that joy of looking for something, finding something we want, bringing it back home. I love opening them right away, but for you, it's like that little bit of like, I need that time to be like, oh yeah, later on, I get to open this up and take a look.
And any other thing that I buy, generally, the packaging is not useful after I open it, so I don't care how I open it. However, when I open action figures, I'm very careful and meticulous when I open the packages.
Now, and this is something that I think I helped you with, because you were not, you used to keep them in packaging, but you also didn't have a lot of them. And now the packages are very collector friendly, so you can open them very carefully, save the package. And if you do decide at some point down the road that you don't want that toy anymore, and it's time to gift it off to someone else, well, you might as well make a lot more money than you would by just giving someone the figure. Yeah. You can give them the package as well. Yeah. So
it's like my Crime Syndicate and New 52 stuff. Like I took them down and I put them back in the boxes after I started getting all this stuff because it was better. And the other stuff was not nearly as articulated as the stuff that we have now. But just before the holidays, I had them on Marketplace probably for a couple months, if not 3 or 4. But even though, like I made it very clear in the description and with the pictures, like boxes have been opened, 2 figures have a broken hand, the broken piece is with it. Somebody asked about it. They're like, can I have these figures? And they were like, I just don't want, it was 3 figures that they didn't want, including a couple of the broken ones. And I was like, well, how about I give it to you all for that price anyway, because I just want to get rid of it all as a set. So like I made $150 off of it, so
pretty good.
Which then I turned into new action figures, but
of course you did. Of course you did. Why spend money on useful things for your house?
That's right. That's all taken care of already.
There are so many things where I'm like, well, I really need some stuff for the kitchen, or I could get myself a toy. And I usually base it on, what's the need? Do I need to get the stuff for the kitchen? Mm-hmm. Sometimes there is a thing I need to get for the kitchen, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll get the new potato peeler. We'll also get this G.I. Joe classified figure.
Well, that's the thing, like my action figure collecting isn't encroaching on the stuff that we need to do for the household. So,
no.
So for the most part, besides the fact that I'm a nearly 45-year-old man that collects toys and doesn't care, just as long as, they're in my office.
So do you have a space for all of the boxes for all the stuff?
Yes.
For all the
at the moment, well, you helped me put them in some of the space.
We did cram them under some of your bookcases, yes.
At the bottom shelves. I do need to do some reorganizing, of course, because I've gotten a few more since you were here last. But I also put some in the bin that was under my table that used to have the Crime Syndicate and New 52 Justice League figures, so there's some in that bin. I might grab another bin.
Richie, how many action figure boxes do you have that you're keeping for storage for down the road? Like, would you say? Just off the top of your head. You don't have to really look.
I'd say at least 50 to 60.
At least 50 to 60. I'm at about 80. Because I do, you're catching up to me, but I still have more than you do across all the lines, I think, right now, just barely. Yeah. But is there stuff that you've gotten in the last year and a bit where you've thrown the box out?
Yes. The stuff that has the Marvel stuff that's in the card back with just the plastic, because once you open that, it's not like an openable package. It's like it's one of those that's sealed onto the cardboard. You literally have to peel it off with the cardboard.
Yes. They call those clamshells, just so everyone
there we go. Aware. There's no saving those clamshells. I mean, I was saving them because I was like very gingerly opening one side and kind of like reaching in and getting the figure. But then you and I talked, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna get rid of these ones because
it's so funny you talk about that, because I was like, we talked about it, and since that time there has been more of the either classic retro line figures come out, both from Marvel and G.I. Joe, or the clamshell stuff. And unless I have to cut it with scissors, which I've only had to do once, and I threw that package out, I've been keeping them, Richie. I've been keeping them. So, all the G.I. Joe retro figures, I keep the package for them, and it's just like they're open on the side, and I'm like, is this a bridge too far?
One thing I do have to say, packaging-wise, and I know this is taking the conversation like uber nerdy, is I do like how Marvel...
Yeah, just this part. Just this part, Richie, is uber nerdy. Not the whole thing. The whole thing.
I do like how Marvel packages their figures better, in the sense, not the clamshell ones, but the ones that are in like boxes, because when you open it, you don't have to cut 17 fucking elastic thingies off of them to get them out of the package. They're just formed well enough in the package that you can take them out. Whereas the McFarlane figures, like I said, there's 17 fucking... So when I'm opening the McFarlane one, it's like I flip it over and I stretch it, snip, stretch, snip, like...
It's funny though, because what Hasbro does with their figure line is different from most other ones, because yes, the McFarlane ones they always have the little plastic things, but so do the NECA figures. They also have the little plastic ties, and it's not the twist ties anymore. It's the ones you actually have to cut. And I appreciate that Hasbro has gone down the road where they do mold their stuff properly. Even when they switched last year briefly to all cardboard, they still had like cardboard twist ties. Yeah. Would keep the figures in place. It wasn't plastic, and I did appreciate that. But man, do I miss those old metal wire twist ties, because I used to have a ton of that stuff just as hidden away. You could use them for Spider-Man figures and stuff like that. Fake webbing. Now they include the webbing.
Yeah, on some of the figures. None of the Spider-Man ones I've gotten so far had webbing included. But so
do you have a? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you have a preference, top or bottom, when you're opening them up?
The clamshells, you mean?
Because not the clamshells, the irregular boxed figures. Okay. Like, do you open from the top or do you open from the bottom?
It depends, because like some of them open from the top. Like all the McFarlane ones open from the top.
The bigger ones, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
And even their other ones, like the McFarlane ones, are made to open from the top. The Marvel Legend ones depend, because some of them are side loading in, and they have their flap is on the side, and some of them are on the top. Like I open it where the natural box point is, like the natural open.
I started, it wouldn't matter. I did half from the top, half from the bottom, but about 2 years ago I started doing exclusively from the bottom, because if it is something you want to resell, the bottom is usually hidden. It's usually on a shelf, or it's usually hidden in a way that you won't see it. So I started doing from the bottom exclusively. I just like it that. I it's just preference. Again, it depends. I think your preference is your preference, but I open it from the bottom. This is a very sexually coded area of this podcast. Top or bottom? Bottom. Richie's more of a top.
The other thing I was going to say is one thing I've
Apologize.
noticed recently, because the majority of the DC figures either come with the plastic stand with the nub on it, probably has a name for that type of stand, or they come with the flight stands, which is the clear stand with the arm that you can put in. They used to, or the majority of the time, they were like clamshelling the stands to the inside of the box. Recently, on a few of the figures that I've gotten from McFarlane, they've come with baggies taped to the box instead, which I prefer because you don't have to.
I love that. I love that.
But they're not being consistent with it because I'm still getting shit with the clamshelled flat stand. Although this one, the empty Zoom box, when you get these guys, they come with like ground effects that their stand is included in that. Like if you look, I'm not sure. Yeah, if you like this figure there's a piece of ground where they both stand on, and here's live Bruce Wayne gravestone in between them, and so.
Yeah, I prefer it when the plastic stands come easily to remove.
Yeah.
Having the plastic up against the back, I mean, sure, it saves on space, but kind of ruins the box for resellability. You need that stand. I have found that with the McFarlane stuff, it's better to use the stand always. Mm-hmm. They do stand on their own, but this is a tip for you, anybody who's listening to this who's thinking of getting into it. Comes with a stand, put it on the goddamn stand. Mm-hmm. Because these things can and will topple over, and you're running a better risk of saving them from toppling over if they're on the stand, if they're on a shelf.
You will ruin whole setups with them toppling over.
That is one of the things, but you're also sometimes, like on my shelf, you can see here, there's some right near the edge. And sometimes they dive. Yeah. And I have been very lucky that in the couple of occasions that they've taken a swan song off the shelf to try to escape, Toy Story-esque, we're alive, we're jumping out of here, that they haven't gotten any damage to the face or any chipped paint.
I think I told you about this one time. I think it was when I still had Skelegod up on the top shelf over here, and I was also not as great at posing yet, so my figures were falling over more often, and he fell over, landed on something that kind of like catapulted, and what was on the other end of the catapult was a pair of fucking scissors, and like went by me, like I almost got killed by Skelegod. So
your figures are alive. Yeah. I mean, they tried to murder you.
Yeah.
They're secretly trying to murder you. When you go to bed at night, they all get off the shelf and have a little like game plan, and they're like, okay, when he comes down, what are we going to do tomorrow to see how we can murder the Overlord and finally be free of him?
Oh, the other...
You really need to do a Dark Toy Story. That's all I'm saying. Yes. Rated R Toy Story, where all the toys come to life. That's a horror movie that they should do. That's true. Is the action figures in your house come to life. They can get all the licenses from all the major toy companies, and they all come to life, and they all try and murder people throughout the whole movie. We would be there day one, and if no one's doing this, let us write the script. We are professional writers. We can do this.
The other thing I like that they've been doing lately, action figure-wise, is the cloth capes. And some of them are nylon, like the Dick Grayson Batman, which I refer to as Dick Bats in our group chat to abbreviate.
I think everyone does, Richie. I think you're not alone in that factor.
His isn't cloth; it's more of a nylon thing to give like a leathery feel to the cape. But I've got a few cloth capes now with some more coming.
Yeah, I haven't. I haven't actually gotten any of the new ones with their cloth capes. They've all still been plastic for the stuff that I'm interested in. But I think there's. I think the newest 1989 Keaton Batman that's coming out in a couple of weeks has a cloth cape.
Because it has wires in it, so you can pose it really well.
Yeah.
And it's really cool.
I think the Batman Begins Batman also has a cloth cape, and those are two figures that I definitely want to add to my collection. Being there, our movie Batman, and I love my Batman. So yeah, that'll be the first my first excursion into the new versions of cloth capes, because none of the stuff I currently have has any cloth capes.
My Chris Reeve Superman figure that's on its way has a cloth cape, and the Fleischer style Superman that I just pre-ordered has a cloth cape as well.
I wonder, because when we were younger, I mean, obviously all the Batman figures in the early 90s and all the Superman figures in the early 90s had cloth capes. And then they moved to plastic capes about 1995, 1996. And then it's been mostly plastic capes. They'll occasionally do some sort of vinyl jacket for certain figures. But I wonder if they changed the manufacturing, if there's been a drop in the cost of manufacturing to that. There's a reason they've kind of made them more of the switch to cloth capes in the last, 2 years in particular.
I think part of it, too, is from a design aspect and because a lot of people know, McFarlane especially knows that people are going to pose the figures. They have photos on McFarlane's Instagram where they have series of posed action figures and really cool scenes sometimes, or even animated stop motion action figure stuff.
Well, this is also the thing, Lord. These days, and this is again why we're big advocates for taking the toys out of the package. And I feel like now more than ever, this is not a controversial take. But 10 years ago, Richie, it was, if you took your shit out of the package, you're basically saying goodbye to 50% of the value down the road. But I think now we've kind of moved towards this. Action figures are great, and save the box. Yeah. You should take them out. You should display them, and all of the toy companies have professional photos now of their figures displayed. I know whenever they release new G.I. Joe lines, always little setups that they put. They're always posed in 4 or 5 different scenes and scenarios, sometimes with other figures. So they take the time to do that kind of work to show the different poses that you can put them in. McFarlane does it. They do it with the Marvel lines a little, but and NECA does it a little bit with their figure lines. Less about being a statue and more about being a toy, but in particular, Hasbro is really good and McFarlane are really, really good at saying, take them out of the box, damn it. If on your shelf, look at all the cool shit.
If I was still keeping them in the box, I probably wouldn't have as many as I do at the moment because I wouldn't have the room for them.
Run out of space.
So
you've run out of space. I mean, you can put them on the hooks and put them on, but I mean, all the stuff that I've gotten over the years, just since 2020, I mean, all my walls would be filled.
Yeah.
I would not be able to put any of my art up. I would not have any wall space that wasn't action figures. And then also be in boxes and closets and everything. You have more space when you take them out. Yeah. Also, I had 20 G.I. Joe figures on this shelf, 20 on that shelf. You can't cram them in boxes, but you can cram them in when they're out. Just kind of stick them shoulder to shoulder. It's just nicer.
Yeah. Yeah, I have
nicer.
12. 12.
There was a
I have 12 McFarlane on that one shelf there, and they're
It's just worth noting there was a time when taking your toys out of the package was definitely a controversial take, because as you mentioned before, a lot of collectors in the 80s and the 90s, they sold their shit. I went through, I don't have as much of the stuff that I had in the 80s and 90s because I sold them all. I had 400 G.I. Joe figures, and now I have 50.
Yeah.
Because I sold all of the G.I. Joe toys that I had in the 80s, in the late 1990s. I sold all the X-Men stuff that I had. I sold all of the Star Wars stuff that I had that wasn't broken. I sold all my Transformers,
Yeah.
and you need money, and you're 20, and you want to go drinking. Boom, toys. So a lot of us collectors did sell all that stuff for pennies on the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
When now, if something happened and it was the difference between me going homeless or selling my toys, which would never happen, by the way. But I'm just to say it, like I could collect up, and I'd say 80% of the stuff that I have on display in this office would go in boxes that could be sold, and some of them, even though it's only been 5 years, there's some that have appreciated in value significantly.
Yeah. It all depends on the popularity of the figure / property, and the values can like peak and like wane as well, because certain characters fall out of favor. So what's one figure was worth yesterday is not going to be worth the same in 5 years, even 2 years. So.
It's also collector market too thing, right? Like what is initially something where it comes out and it's not available. It's like, oh, the value skyrockets initially for the first like 2 months because it's out, but it's not available in stores because all the collectors have bought it up. So like somebody who wants that now is looking for it. Well, the collector bought it up, so they get it from the collector at triple the cost that they would have paid at retail. Yeah. But then a year later, because all of those toys are out there, they're out and available for sale, the cost then drops down.
Yeah.
Instead of them being difficult to find at a higher price point, they're easy to find. So it's like, well, I'm not going to spend $80 in a year on a toy where every single person has it, and they're just sitting around in their houses, so they have to drop the price and drop the price and drop the price. Collecting market is the same with comic books. You know this. It's supply and demand. It's what is out there for the supply. What is the demand? Is the supply equal to the demand? Is the supply too much for the demand? Is the supply... is there so much supply that there is no longer demand because it is easy to pick it up? That's really an ebb and flow for all of this stuff, and there's no way to tell what the value on something you get is going to be either in 6 months or 5 years or 20 years. You shouldn't get into toy collecting for the monetary return.
No.
I mean, unless it's a bigger business for you, in which case you're buying everything, and then that's different. But just for simple collectors like us, you get it because you like it.
Yeah, you get it because you have a passion for it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we got one more thing for you guys on this inaugural episode, and that's we each selected a figure from our collection, a whatchamacallit, not new figure that we've gotten recently, something that we've had for a little bit, and I will let Tupper go first on this one because his pictures are the one that I have ready first.
I sent my photos.
Yes.
I sent them. So my choice initially, I'm just going to show them here because I have them here.
Hold on.
But you can post the photos as well. Is the first figure, the new G.I. Joe classified line, which was released in 2020, and that is Snake Eyes. So as a kid, as I mentioned before, I was a big fan of the G.I. Joe toys, the cartoon, but I love the toys way, way more, and I had all of them because my dad was also interested in them as well. And my favorite, of course, most G.I. Joe fans' favorite is Snake Eyes. I mean, he's a ninja. Ninjas are always cool. He's always masked. There's a very big mystery about what he looks like. He's all scarred and disfigured. If you don't know the history of the guy, is we don't know his real name. It's just Snake Eyes, but he's a ninja, and he's a white ninja who got all scarred up. And so he's always masked, and he gets shot through the neck with an arrow, so he can never talk. He can never speak. He's always silent. But I mean, it's. I don't have to justify my love for Snake Eyes. He's awesome. I had like a ton of Snake Eyes figures as a kid, and as they were going through, and when I got some of the little 3 and 3/4 inch ones, when they released some like 20th anniversary stuff in the mid 2000s, like 2015, 2014, 2013. I got a new one of Snake Eyes for that. But this is to me one of the pinnacles of action figure joy, because this is a fully articulated toy. You can put him in all the kind of best poses for ninja battling and ninja fighting. He comes with a sword. He comes with a gun. This is, by the way, this is not. You can see it. This is the ooze. This is an Uzi. He comes with another Snake Eyes figure. This guy came with like a super fantasy gun, like a sci-fi gun.
Yeah.
And it's because when they first released the classified line, they gave all the G.I. Joe figures sci-fi guns, and then the collectors were like, "No, give us the real guns." So they started doing when they were putting out new versions of the line and new figures. They were like, let's give them more authentic action figures, just like in the 80s. So I switched out the sci-fi gun for this Uzi that I got with another Snake Eyes figure. But I have 4 right now. Yeah, I have 4 Snake Eyes figures. There are 6 available through the classified line. This is still my favorite. It's the first one. I love the mask. I love the design. It's perfect. This is a perfect toy in my mind that is meant to be displayed and posed. And the G.I. Joe classified line, which as we go through the episodes on this, you will find I have a great love for it. I will be talking about it a lot. I will be showing a lot of the toys. I will be reviewing them because it's my favorite line, because it was my favorite line as a kid. And I think this is one of those cases where they've dated something for modern times in the best possible way. This is if you loved these toys in the 80s, you love them now, because this is a bigger, more detailed version of those figures that are ultra posable, with a ton of accessories at a reasonable price. I mean, all toys are stupidly expensive now. I remember when you could get them for like $10.
Yeah.
Even the old Marvel Legends stuff in 2005, 2006 was like $12, $13, $14 for a 6-inch figure, and this was $30.
Yeah.
That was 5 years ago, and now they're $36 or $45 if you go to Toys R Us. Stupid ass Toys R Us.
Yeah.
So it's expensive as a hobby, but I think with the G.I. Joe line, you do get value is inherent in there, and the packages are great, and they're stackable, and you can display them, or you can just store them somewhere, and they're easy to store because they're squares. Mm-hmm. They're small, but I think the classified line is perfect stuff. And even though there's been 140 figures that have been released since Snake Eyes here in 2020, I still think that Snake Eyes is one of the top 5 whole line.
Nice.
So
I would have to agree, even though I'm not G.I. Joe action figure collector, but. So my figure, I chose very specifically. Now, it was a little harder for me not pick something recent, because I did get rid of my older ones and buy a lot of stuff. But this is one of the oldest ones that I got when I first started getting back into it. And I'll bring it up here first. It is the Speeding Bullets Superman. And that name may be very familiar to you, because that is exactly... I didn't just pick Speeding Bullets because it was, faster than a speeding bullet, reference to Superman. I chose the name of the podcast originally very specifically because when we first started it in its original carnation, I'm the Superman guy, Reddy was the Batman guy, and so I was like, all right, I got the perfect name for that. And then it was it's an Elseworld story where, and I've told this before, but just a quick thing for anyone that doesn't know, Superman, instead of landing with the Kents, lands in Gotham with Thomas and Martha Wayne, and first becomes more of a Batman-like hero, and then through meeting Lois Lane becomes the more hopeful hero of Superman later on in the story. Spoilers.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, it's a what? When did it come out? I have it up here. It's a 1993 story, so if you haven't fucking read it by now, I'm not sorry for
You're not
spoiling
gonna,
it for you.
Yeah, you're not gonna read it.
But it's great. It came with a flight stand. I'm currently not posing it with the flight stand because I actually have him in his pose right now. He's more of a like a ready stance type thing because I'm using his flight stand for someone else at the moment. But comes with a couple different hands. He's got like open like sort of like hands, or he's got fists that you can put on him as well. But yeah, that's mine. Because I figured we're speeding bullets, might as well include the action figure. And they did really, like, even in the comic, they did really well making like a super Batman symbol. I do wish, if they ever do remake it, that they would include like a cloth cape, because this cape, even plastic, is cool because I like the tattering there.
Yeah, me too.
So.
Me too. Yeah, I mean, I would love to have that one, and I love Batman figures with the covering over the face.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bunch where his face is covered, so I've always wanted to have that one anymore because it's like not available and it's expensive. But yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong. Can't go wrong, and it's a nice little like throwback to the whole purpose of these podcasts existing. And now you came full circle when you got that toy.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of bring it all together. And now we're coming full circle by you talking about it on a podcast that you created, Speeding Bullets, now talking about toys for connects. An hour. That's right. Everything is connected. It's lost.
That's right.
We need to go back to the island.
Yes.
The island of misfit toys.
That being said, we've got a bunch of ideas for what we're gonna do for future episodes. If there's toys that you want us to talk about, or not talk about, we will probably talk about it anyway. But let us know, and we will keep making this toy podcast because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're going to talk about, we'll do reviews of stuff. We're going to do regular reviews because Richie has a bunch of new stuff and I got a couple of new things. So we're going to start that the next episode. We'll have a review. We're going to talk a little bit the history of toys and the history of action figures, lines that we love, lines that we hated, stuff that is new that we hated. It's going to be a mishmash. It's going to be a little bit of everything, but it's going to be fun. And I speak for Richie when I say the goal is for this podcast to be successful enough to start getting toys sent to us for free to review. So if you come across this part, you're like, how do I get on for a review? If you are working for Hasbro or McFarlane or NECA, or literally any line that makes any kind of action figures, please send it to us. Email us, info@speedingbulletsreloaded.com, and send us your toys, and we will happily review them.
That's right. And
we would love to get free stuff. We would love to get free stuff and talk about it. And we'll do it in a way that even if we hate it, we'll be like, well, it's not the best, but it's not the worst.
Well, there will be future episodes coming up where I will be talking about new figures that I received, because I think when my Task Force, Justice League Task Force figures come in, I'll wait to open them until we record our next episode, because while I do like them, I do have constructive criticism on a few pieces of them.
Oh, yeah. We'll never hold back our actual opinions. Mm-hmm. We're really good expressing those things. Mm-hmm. Experts at expressive opinions. Yeah.
So, but until then, keep buying toys.
Yeah. Don't pay your rent. Don't pay rent. Don't buy food. Buy plastic.
We've never had a sign off for any of our shows, so I'm just trying to throw something out there.
You don't need a sign off. You just need to be like, we'll come back later, but keep buying toys is almost like, mortgage your house and just spend it on action figures. You know, your body's already filled with enough microplastics.
That's right.
So what's more plastic in your house? Make it happen.
All right. Bye, folks.
Bye, folks. Doo-doo.
Excellent.
Look at that. It was like exactly an hour.
Nice. And that's the thing too. If we do want to have like the video aspect, that's like the perfect, I think, amount for
45 to 60 minutes is perfect for a video.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do reviews, you can always chop up review portion into like a 20-minute YouTube video or 10-minute YouTube video, and put that out there if that will also help. I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's one thing I've learned is that action figure and toy communities are very much like tight-knit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if, as the time goes on with this, if we'll get a lot of people following us because they do like to. I know I like to, but I have a line like, so I will come across YouTube videos that are really awesome, like the guy Dan Larson that does Toy Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
He's super cool. He's really well spoken, and he's nerdy like we're nerdy. But when he talks about stuff, it feels like it feels very loose and
natural.
very relatable.
It's not like these trying to sell you something or.
Yeah, it's not awkward at all. It just feels really nice to listen to him because that guy and what he does is they've got a really good handle on it. But there's been times when it's like, okay, well, I'm going to talk about that fire figure from the 80s. And you just see this, no face, just talking, using the toy. And it's like, what's wrong with your face, dude?
Yeah.
Like, do you have a giant scar or, like, wrong with you? Put your face up on there because you're not connecting with the audience that way. And also some people have weird voices, and maybe people think we have weird voices. I don't know.
I know.
It is, at least we talk in a way that is connective to people.
Accessible
and I don't
as
think
well.
we have weird voices. Accessible, yeah, and some of the toy stuff that I've seen is by nerds who have no personality.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that by us doing this,
and we've got the personality.
We got personality for days, son. So I'm hoping that it is the kind of thing where people will connect with the personality and will become have a little bit of a brand. Send us free shit. We want free shit. Give us your shit. I want toys.
I was half hoping that during that recording, GameStop was going to call and tell me that the figures were arrived, and I was going to totally put them on speakerphone.
I don't think you can do that. I think you can't do that because then they'll know you can't record somebody's voice without their permission.
I would tell them, and
sounds like a lot of work, Richie. Sounds like a lot of work.
I'm good with my GameStop people.
We'll be able to do this pretty much
whenever we feel like it.
Yeah, like at least once a week. Let's shoot for once a week for now, and if it becomes more popular, maybe we can do more.
Yeah.
But we can do it once a week, pretty much at the same time, every week.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if you're looking for stuff, I mean, there's a ton of stuff that we can talk about.
Yeah.
I have old toys too that I can drag out, and I can be like, this is our old toy of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have old figures from the 80s and the 90s, and we can showcase that stuff because I know I love to see that stuff, so I think people would get a kick out of it.
Or it can even be old toys that we want to get. We can talk about toys that new ones that are coming,
Oh yeah, we should definitely do a little bit like if there was pre-orders and stuff this week, like next week you'd be like, oh, this is stuff that came up for pre-order if you're interested, or this is what we pre-ordered. That's all it's pretty much all for grabs. But I will definitely go through some of my older figures so we can talk about some of that stuff. I have to reorganize the boxes that I have toys in anyway. So, yeah.
Hey there, special characters. The special adventures of Jumpy Milkshake and Flag Person will return after these messages.
Introducing the world's leading covert squad of uniquely talented super professional secret specialists, 1980 Force! But just who are they? There's only one way to find out. Buy them. 1984's a multi-skilled elite unit of super agents fighting for peace. Obliterating evil isn't a game. Everybody's gotta have a rad code name like Quick Wit. She makes quips and jokes, keeping morale high while kicking in foes. Strike Zone, the baseball themed guy. His pitching machine guns making him cry. Wanna know why? Grenade balls is tough. He's a leading expert in blowing up stuff. Sneaky pants, you won't hear him stepping. Throwing surprise parties with silent weapons. You like people? Wildlife was one till he got abandoned at the age of 1. Left alone as a baby, raised at a zoo. Now he talks to animals like talking to you. 1984, so I know it's hard to remember. All 1980 members. That's why you have to go and collect them all. Tell your parents they can buy them at the mall now. Nutritional beast, he's a team vegan, socially active, pounding teeth in, party line, all calling devices are her communications, always the nicest. Neil Hall, the chaplain's assistant, a faithful non-combatant to have on your mission. Child kick, what's a kid doing there? She joined the team when someone had an affair. Shrink wrap, the rapping psychiatrist, here to listen in between rhyme writing hits. With this man, you're in for a spin, shooting CDs like hurling shuriken. Close shave, so mean with the clippers, cleaning the team so they don't look like hipsters. Last nerve, the team single dad, got no free time, don't make him mad. 1984, so I know it's hard to remember. All 1980 members. That's why you have to go and collect them all. Tell your parents they can buy them at the mall now. When's that new series of 1984's coming out? Right now. Go, go, go! The new series is here, featuring Lobster Trap, the team pirate. Who would have thought of that? Snowpack, with skills of snow, has Arctic abilities. Nobody knows. Sandcraft, can handle the heat in the desert, can even get sand to speak. Reuse, she's a recycling expert. Climate controlling, to heighten the effort. Unregistered nurse, makes you feel better with medicine and won't let the enemy get her. You better watch out, coin ops on the case. The team robot with a TV face. Chopside, beats eggs like he beats foes. And just wait till you taste his meatloaf. Collect them all, then send away for codename. He's the one who gives everybody codenames. 1984, so I know it's hard to remember. All 1980 members. That's why you have to go and collect them all. Tell your parents they can buy them at the mall now.
Because my brother still looks like he's 20, and he's 38 this year. And I don't look like I'm in my mid-40s, so except for the gray.
All right. So
Thinking about dyeing it, Richie.
ooh, what color? Normal.
I'm gonna go fuchsia.